A non sequitur is a conclusion or statement that doesn't necessarily follow from the previous argument or statement. I'm Larry Fedorik, and this is Later That Sane Life. Each week on my podcast, different topics, discussions, or stories from our lives.
Season 15, Chapter 2, Non Sequiturs, Part 7.
Yeah, different topics, discussions, and stories. But if you're a fan of this series, you know usually one main theme per episode. You would also know that every once in a while I end up with a bunch of different topics and ideas, none of which individually could fill an entire podcast. So instead I throw them all into this podcast stew pot, and I call it a non sequitur episode. In random order, here's some points to ponder. Let's start at the airport. Dunedin is a southern city in New Zealand. Recently, airport officials there issued a 3-minute hug limit on farewells at the drop-off zone. They put signs up. Max hug time, 3 minutes. For fonder farewells, please use the car park. That's what they call the parking lot, which I've always loved and wish we would adopt in our vernacular, the car park. Naturally, the world lost their mind. And not just people in Dunedin, New Zealand, but all over the world. Even people who will never likely fly out of that airport. Outrageous 3-minute hug limit. How dare they? I love the rule. Obviously, what it really is a 3-minute parking limit while dropping off passengers at the airport. I imagine they already had these 3-minute parking limit signs posted, and I'll bet people just ignored them. Let's face it, there are a lot of rules in society we just don't bother following, and a lot of them have to do with the automobile. We speed, we do rolling stops at stop signs, we park where we please, and obviously in New Zealand, they disregard the time limit at the drop-off. Backups and chaos ensued. Officials got creative. Instead of more tickets and tow trucks, they made it personal. Parking 3-minute limit? No. 3-minute hug limit. Genius. It got people's attention. And they added that little bit of advice. Longer goodbyes in the car park. And of course, right? Do the longer goodbyes at home. Or say goodbye on the drive to the airport. If you do all of this properly, then 3 minutes hug time at the drop-off zone is more than enough. You know, if you're not going to be courteous and respectful of others, then we have to make rules to keep you in check. Mind you, I'm not sure how this one will be enforced. I wouldn't want to be the hug police, that's for sure. Staying at the airport for a bit, American Airlines has introduced new technology that would alert airline gate attendants if a passenger is trying to board out of order. This is not just a problem for American. It's a problem for all airlines. Again, people can't seem to follow the simple rules. So even if you don't fly that much, you still might remember how the boarding lounge works. People with small children or special needs usually get to go first. After that, the airlines break up the rest of the passengers into special groups, Group A, B, C, etc. That designation is often on your boarding pass. Some passengers don't care. They just start boarding whenever they want to board. Why? They're arrogant, dishonest, feel privileged, or just want first access to the coveted overhead bin space. Yes, all of those. So the new tech scans your pass, and if it doesn't match the group that is currently being assigned for boarding, then there's a distinct audible. Sorry, go back and sit down and wait your turn. Studies have shown that we hate those people who cheat at the boarding lounge, but not necessarily because we're honest and they are cheaters, but because we ourselves don't have the nerve to cheat. Humans, we're so unnecessarily complicated. Also, there's a term for those people who cut in line at the boarding lounge. Gate lice. That's right, gate lice. Oh, here's one. The last time I flew was a couple of years ago. My brother and I going to our mother's funeral in Saskatoon. On the way back, it's mid-afternoon, we're in the boarding lounge, waiting our turn. A young woman is sitting across from us, reading a book, her coat draped over her carry-on bag. Suddenly, this perfect stranger, who we haven't even made small talk with, I don't think even eye contact, looks up at us and says, "Hey, can you watch my stuff for a minute?" My brother says, "Sure." And she gets up and wanders off somewhere. What? I look at my brother and I say, if some guy does try and take her stuff, you're the one that's going to be in a fist fight with him. I didn't commit to watching her stuff. You did. Of course, if push came to shove, I would back him up, but I was just saying. And what about her? Why did she find us trustworthy? We have honest faces? I mean, we were going to be on the same plane. Where could we actually go with her stuff? Maybe she's just naive. I don't know. I've never forgotten that moment. Someone asking a couple of complete strangers to watch their stuff. I would never do that. I've always wondered, if someone did take her stuff because we weren't really watching, would we be responsible, liable for her loss? By saying, "Oh yeah, sure," had we entered into some verbal security contract? We as a society do this all the time. Several friends will be at a bar or a pub. "Hey, I'm going to the washroom, watch my stuff." So if their purse or jacket gets stolen, is it my fault? Can they sue me? Are these quick social agreements legally binding? I'll bet they are. I bet a lawyer could make a good case. He said he was going to watch her stuff, and I'll bet I'm the only one who takes that responsibility seriously. If we're in a social situation and someone says, "Watch my stuff," I keep an eye on it. Your stuff is safe with me. Incidentally, when I was looking at the story about 3-minute max hug time at the airport, I looked up the general category, strange laws and regulations from around the world. I found a few different lists, but you know what it said on one of them? It's a strange law. In Canada, the law forces Canadian radio stations to play Canadian artists. When you say it like that, it does sound strange. And of course, it's true. I grew up in that business. I always knew the regulation, and ultimately, it did work, in my opinion, to help grow a unique Canadian music industry. But up until recently, I really hadn't thought of it as a strange law, but it is. One would think that Canadian radio stations would want to play Canadian artists. They didn't. So there had to be a law, and there still is. And all those radio station managers who had to be legislated into playing Canadian artists? Data shows that they are the same ones who cut in line at the boarding lounge. No, there's no data, but I'll bet. Hey, what's the deal with Cheryl Hines? If you don't know who that is, I will explain. But first, after the U.S. federal election, I half joked that I felt sorry for comedian Jim Gaffigan. During the campaign, Jim Gaffigan played, and to a T, by the way, running mate Tim Walz on Saturday Night Live. Harris wins the election, and he's got a semi-regular 4-year SNL gig. But Harris loses, and now he's just gone. Now he'll do all right. I don't feel sorry for Jim Gaffigan or his 5 kids. But no doubt a Harris victory would have helped his career. Now, not. And how about Kamala herself? Famously, Biden stepping down meant a 107-day campaign for Harris. 107 days. For 107 days, all we saw was Kamala. Kamala, Kamala, Kamala. All day, every day. Interviews, podcasts, rallies. Then Trump wins, and she's just vanished. I don't blame her. She deserves a break. But she is still the Vice President of the United States for a few more weeks. Hey, get to work. So I wondered about Gaffigan and about Harris and about Cheryl Hines. Hines is an actress most famous for playing Larry David's wife and ex-wife for all 12 seasons on Curb Your Enthusiasm. Just over a decade ago, at a party in Los Angeles introduced by Larry David, she meets Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. She becomes his third wife. Well, that seems fine. Two mature adults who find each other later in life. They're a celebrity couple. She's a California registered Democrat. He is a Kennedy who spends most of his time as an environmental lawyer. What could go wrong? Well, RFK Jr. then becomes an independent candidate for U.S. president. And his loyal spouse is by his side at public events. She even did some TV appearances, not about the Curb series finale, but about his candidacy. But then he becomes basically an anti-vaxxer, to which Cheryl Hines has to take an opposing stance. It gets worse. News of RFK Jr. infidelities. To which he responds, hey, I'm not a church boy. There's a sexting scandal with a political reporter. Not to mention strange admissions of brain worms and odd encounters with animal carcasses. Wow, vote for me. So, a marriage survives that. But then RFK Jr.'s father and uncle turn over in their graves when he supports Trump, and now looks to be the pick for Trump's cabinet as Secretary of Health and Human Services. And side note, that's not even Trump's strangest cabinet pick. That's where that is at. When by comparison, RFK Jr. working in health seems okay. How does a registered Democrat handle her hubby's job now? This is an odd couple now for sure. And it's not one's really messy and the other's a neat freak. How will they ever get along? This is strange. When Trump had his own black tie coronation at Mar-a-Lago a few weeks ago, Kennedy was there. So was the missus. Cheryl Hines socializing and yucking it up with the likes of the Donald and the Elon. When RFK Jr. first entered the election, Hines was noted for saying that she wanted her husband to feel supported and loved. Well, yes, that is an ideal spouse mantra, but how practical is it in a MAGA world? If you go to any of Hines's social accounts, almost zero mention of the hubby or politics. Hines is very busy promoting her and her daughter's development of plastics-free cosmetics. Maybe she'll go the Melania route. You know, low-key, almost no politics. Promote your own book or product or thing. Show up at your husband's side only when absolutely necessary. You know, her character on Curb put up with her husband, Larry David. He was frustrating and maddening, but somehow she still loved him. She even took him back once. I kind of wonder if the fictional Cheryl is like the real-life Cheryl. Or, you know what, they just get divorced. Which is what my money's on. Cheryl Hines, you know, she's not the most famous, the richest, or the most powerful celebrity out there. But somehow this one person has ended up in a very unique position. And for me, she is an individual of great personal fascination. Cheryl Hines, you know, call Kamala, and then the two of you can take Jim Gaffigan out for a beer. Let's see, what else is on the non-sequitur list for today? Major League Baseball will experiment with so-called robot umpires at spring training next season. For me, the sooner the better. We already use high-tech to review all the plays in all kinds of professional sports. But we're just dipping our toe. We gotta dive right in. I've offered my argument in favor before, because people will always say this will lessen some of the human factor. I point out that the humans that I want to see in any game are the players, not an umpire, referee, line judge, etc. If their human error affects the humans that I came to see compete, and we have a way to fix that with technology, why wouldn't we do it? And by the way, one of the reasons cited by baseball for this initiative is professional gambling. Oh yeah, gambling. There is so much money at stake on every call. They don't want mistakes to happen. They don't want umpires and referees to be suspected of being on the take, or even making a genuine mistake, and then having their lives threatened by those in the professional gambling business. It is my opinion, by the way, that all online gambling should be banned. Gambling on sports shouldn't be as easy as a few taps on a smartphone. The NFL has issued warnings to their players. Apparently other sports leagues have followed suit. After home robberies of, among others, Kansas City Chiefs players Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, gangs, thought to be Chilean, are watching social media for the habits of high-profile athletes, and even something as well known as away games. The gangs operate usually in teams of about 4. They'll smash windows and doors, and then quickly hustle through the property, picking up jewelry, watches, designer handbags, cash, credit cards. Anything they can easily carry and run away with. A third gang member is tasked with electronically blocking wireless messages going out to security companies, while a fourth is somewhere in the neighborhood, basically watching for the cops. Money gets into foreign bank accounts, and products are hustled out of the country before you can say 911. These gangs not only monitor social sites, but pose in neighborhoods as joggers, maintenance workers, and delivery men, all to case the joint. And these expensive homes, they often border on large parkland or golf courses or forested areas, making escape very easy. Imagine getting this memo from your boss at the NFL. I guess if you're rich and you look rich, then you get targeted. You know, it's the expensive cars that get carjacked out in public. I tell you, if I was a gazillionaire, I would drive a 2004 tan Toyota Camry with rust spots on it, and those rims that look like I have winter tires on 12 months a year. And I'd be like the chicken man in Breaking Bad. I'd pull up to a house every day, but I'd actually live in another house across the street connected by a tunnel. And finally, I don't know if you heard, but a banana has sold recently for $6 million. The banana is attached to a white wall with a piece of classic silver duct tape. It's an artwork. It's called The Comedian, and recently sold at auction to a Chinese crypto billionaire for $6 million. You don't even get the artwork per se. You get a banana and some duct tape and instructions how to install it yourself. And then, of course, every so often you have to replace the banana. Just at the right angle, you have to use just the right amount of duct tape in a certain way. And this is worth $6 million. Later in that same newscast, there was a story of a school food program that was so hard up for funds, they had to cut bananas into 4 pieces so that more kids would get at least something for a snack. Meanwhile, one banana, $6 million on a whim. The news anchors didn't point out the connection. I just made it for myself. They laughed hilariously at the idea of someone spending $6 million on a banana. But it's not funny. The artwork itself is kind of interesting. It has appeal, no pun intended. It's kind of cool looking. It's creative. Just not $6 million worth. I'm sure 6,000 people somewhere could use an extra $1,000 right now. Or kids at school could actually finish an entire banana if they had one. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the arts are as important as the sciences. We need dreamers as much as we need doers if we are to have a fully functioning society. It's not that the sculptures and the paintings and the installations and the bananas taped to a wall aren't important. It's just they've been turned into a commodity, a prized possession, available only to the highest bidder. It's been said that these high-end auction houses and art dealers are thrilled with the Trump victory. It seems that their business has been struggling lately because the rich weren't getting richer, and they didn't have those extra millions for wishes and whims. They will now.
Attention, Neiman Marcus shoppers. Rolex savings now in aisle 3.
Later That Same Life is written, voiced, and produced by Larry Fedoruk. LarryFedoruk37@gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.